Aristotle's got stuff on it. They use Plato. I had to really, knuckle down and just start reading stuff that was way over my head in the beginning. I had a little bit of background. I took one class in existentialism in college. So I had already attempted to read Hegel in 82. And to tell you the truth, I tried to make my daughter read him and say, you need to read him. He's important.
Right, yeah.
They base everything on him, and nobody can understand Hegel, and if they claim that they do, they're lying. I had a professor in Frankfurt write and tell me that only 12 people in the world, and they're native German speakers, can actually understand Hegel. And he was reassuring me that Amitai Etzioni isn't one of them.
Okay, right.
So, for us to, how dare us as little laymen, two little women from Seattle, to sit down and write a thesis called What is the Hegelian Dialectic? And that's what we ended up doing, because it's such an important part. This thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, comes from a lot of his writings. And people will they'll reference Hegel, and they'll call it the Hegelian dialectic. But then if you ask them, what is the Hegelian dialectic, they have a hard time explaining it, because it was just written to be totally confusing. And that's what we've seen in it, is that it's like when they asked me in Seattle, don't you want to live in a nice neighborhood? They set up the choice for me to say, my only answer, because I didn't want to be in their database and I didn't want the new government to intervene and help me, that I didn't want a mental health officer to come to my door and interview me to see if I had any mental problems.
Right, of course. Yeah.
But that meant to them, I could say, I don't agree with your program, and their answer to that was, don't you want to live in a nice neighborhood?
Yeah.
Don't you want to be part of a good community? So if I said no, then I look like someone who wants to live in a bad community. It was brilliant. It shuts you right down, right on the spot. You're like, I don't know what these people are talking about.
Right.
So I started asking them for definitions of the terms, and that's what led me to Etzioni, but it took a year to find those phrases, and where they were coming from, because they all could repeat them, but none of them knew what the heck they were talking about.
So these people are obviously being trained somewhere. Do you think this training occurs on a specific level, specific institutions that handle these people, this terminology, or is this basically so rampant throughout entire society now, so you just have to go through the regular school system to get the same level of indoctrination? Thoughts?
I think it's come all the way down to the lowest levels now. The children in the elementary school down the road are being thoroughly indoctrinated under Earth Charter, Earth Worship, saving, preserving the beautiful wilderness. And, there's a lot of levels where they're teaching people. Stop Common Purpose in the UK, Brian Gersh and those guys, they've sent me quite a bit, actually, and they do understand the communitarian philosophy very well and how it's being taught. I know people are trying to find Stop Common Purpose in the United States, but you don't have to look for it. It's called the Communitarian Network at George Washington University, and these classes are being taught. Vassar College had a sociology class called Quality of Life. It's at all the academic institutions in the United States. Find it everywhere. Some places they actually study the law and call it communitarian law, but mostly that's in Europe and Asia and South America.
Let's go back a little bit and just talk about the Hegelian dialectic in another sense. Then, how would you define it then, if you were to do your best, to give your best shot at it, so to speak?
Okay, my definition, I guess my short version of it would be, it's total BS. The longer version would be, if you don't get it, that means you got it.
Okay. So the purpose is that you shouldn't get it. It's very zen then, I guess, in a way. Yeah.
So that you feel stupid. Everything they've written, and the 19th century was full of dialectical writing. It's killed lots of people.
What do you think? What do you think that is? Is that to Orwell's doublethink? Is that what this is about here? Having two contradictory thoughts in your head at the same time? What's up here?
Well, it's kind of that, kind of two contradictory thoughts. But what it is it beats down your natural instincts for survival. Because what they're up against is human survival instincts are, still pretty powerful, okay? So anything that doesn't sound good or doesn't look good to people, like the Irish, for instance, when they voted down the Lisbon Treaty.
Yeah.
The reason most people left at the polling that were polled as they were leaving, the reason they gave was that it was too long, they couldn't understand it, and anything that they couldn't understand that was that long couldn't be good for the Irish. I loved it. I'm like, perfect. That's exactly it. If you can't understand something, then it's not good for you.
Mm.
And the purpose of the Hegel, let alone the modus operandi, that's what Joan Bion called it, and that was a good one,
Yep.
because it is. It's the way that they do it. It's the way they set you up to give in to their demands.
Mm.
But they don't really want to put a gun to your head. They will if they have to, okay? They're
Right.
showing that in Iraq, Afghanistan,
Yeah.
lots of places, okay?
Yeah.
But they would much rather, especially the countries that contribute large tax dollar base, okay, which would be the U.S., U.K. There's a lot of places,
Mm.
and we're still contributing. People are paying for all this. So they want us to embrace it as our new ideology, as the way, that the best solution to global poverty, climate change, whatever. They have all their new science is also based in the Hegelian dialectic. It's the root. Communitarianism is the ultimate synthesis that Marx couldn't name, that Hegel couldn't name. No one's ever been able to name the final solution beyond communism, really, And I was just reading some other stuff, though, that they confuse it a lot. And so what happens to people when you start reading 19th century, writing, you're confused. Look, existentialism, when I took that class, I wanted out of that class.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it was so painful. I must have read Nietzsche, this passage I was supposed to understand. I read it 100 times, and I went to my teacher and said, "I'm too stupid. You got to let me out of this class because I don't get it."
Mm.
And he made me stay, and I felt inadequate the entire time. And I think that one of the things that's done academically for people is that if everyone else is it's the emperor's new clothes. Everyone else is pretending like they get it, okay? And you're going to be the only person in the room that says, "But I don't understand." They don't expect that. And then if you do say that about any of their theories in a public meeting, when you're questioning a new law, or in a classroom where you're questioning the theory that the professor just explained, they have really good tools of manipulation are built into the Hegelian dialectic so that they can use that against you on the spot and twist it around and make you feel stupid or inadequate for even asking the question. So what you have is a world full of people that are embarrassed that they don't understand what's going on. And I wrote, one of my earliest articles was, "Ask your stupid questions because they're the right ones to ask."
Well, absolutely, I definitely agree there. It's about all, you have to dare to ask the questions and put the authorities, so to speak, there on the spot and actually try to get some clear answers there. And I definitely agree with that. But I mean, are you saying here that 19th century, philosophy is all, it's too difficult for us to understand, or is it just BS all of it, or what do you mean?
Well, to me it's BS because it's been used to infiltrate my life. Okay, I could have cared less whether I remember when I realized that it was being worth versus nothing that the main Nietzschean who else went off on that? Dostoevsky. There were several of them that really embraced the go inside and find the depths of your depravity and nothingness. And then when you reach nothing, then and only then you begin to really live,
Yeah, right.
I was like, wow, that's intense, So is that BS? Well, what did it do for my education? What did it do for the way that I think, okay? I think what it does is rob you of your instinct. All of a sudden you're like, well, is that my depraved side? I don't know. And yeah, I don't know. I found it to be, and I've seen it in a lot of students. I've seen it in a lot of really bright high school students that grew up with my daughter that went into college in their first year of college. They take a sociology class and they all feel like they're suicidal practically, because now they feel it's so inadequate. Well, I just think that that's part of the psycho, there's this whole, okay, it's sorcery, it's magic. These are words that can make you change the way you feel about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's part of it, So the game on every level is to make you give up your sovereignty, your individual sovereignty and your national sovereignty. Those are the two things that they say are they're the problem. They're a world problem. They're the cause of global poverty. They're the cause of everything.
Could it also not be that, philosophy overall isn't for everyone, in that regard, that the mistake, so to speak, here might be to think that this is something that is suitable for everyone. Just as you say, you talk very much about just, primarily our drives, our needs as human beings should, be there in place first. But then, who seeks for something more beyond that? I'd reckon that would be something interesting and giving for that person to go into and study some of the other philosophies and see what the heck they have to say, and then see if if it's applicable to yourself. But could it be that this idea that everyone should read this, everyone should be trained in this type of thinking, that is actually what is bad here? What do you think?
Yes, I agree with you. I'm glad you clarified that for me, because I'm going to get a ton of email now from people who are like, what are you talking about? You're so full of it, I think that they've written maybe 1 million books that are all leading to where we're at today.
Right.
And to me, it's like every one of them's a rabbit hole too, okay? I made the big mistake of saying, I want to understand the philosophy. I should have stayed away from that. But in the end, it was good. Okay.
Well, you've learned a tremendous amount, have you not? That's the...
Well, in order for me to understand communitarianism as the synthesis in the Hegelian dialectic, which is what they say it is, okay?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Everything that I say, okay, about Hegel being BS, that's me. Okay?
Exactly, yeah. Yep.
They don't say that.
Of course not.
But everything else I say about communitarianism, I learned from them, except for my thesis, obviously. The Anti-Communitarian Manifesto is real clear about what we think they're doing with it and why it was created, how it was created. I would change a few parts of it today, and we wrote it almost 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been online, and over 4,000 people have responded to my poll and told me why they've been there. I've had professors look at it. I've had academic review boards look at it. I think it's pretty sound, which is really scary, because that means we're right. And if we're right, then all of this other stuff, it's almost like I wanted to move on from it, because how they got us here isn't as important to me as we're here now, what are we going to do now? Because that's the main question that people write and ask me, okay?
Sure, yeah.
How does this apply to me? And the problem is that every religion has been communitarianized, every one of them. Some of them may have begun as communitarian institutions. I don't even know, The New Age is a big piece of this. A lot of the New Age ideology. Just about, and so your Christian community is faced with some really awful things that they have to look at, and yet many of them remain Christian, which I totally respect. I have friends in Seattle who are very New Age, and they're wonderful people, In fact, Michael Sarian knows one of them, and this is a really giving, generous human being. I never wanted to challenge his belief system, okay? I never wanted to say this is part of the global government belief system too, because what I understand is that what the system is doing is it has a piece of everything in it.
Mm-hmm.
So